Afternoon, everyone. We had a broad-based rally on both sides of the border today, with the U.S. markets seeing their best day of all of 2021, and the TSX also faring well today. As we think about the markets, what were the key drivers? Well, certainly some stabilization within the bond market. That, of course, was a key concern last week with the yield curve steepening and the concern that rates might rise too fast, that the economy might be hotter, that we'll see too much inflation. That was put to the sidelines today. It seems as well as though the central bankers are out there buying up some of their bonds and therefore keeping the yield environment or the interest rate environment at bay. We also, of course, had positive news surrounding the J&J vaccine. The FDA approved the one-dose vaccine from J&J over the weekend. That was somewhat expected, but nonetheless, it's a positive. Also, of course, we had the House approve the COVID relief package to the tune of $1.9 trillion. That was also expected, but taken all together, investors were buying back, and it seems as though that theme that we've talked a little bit about, which is buying the dip since the 2008 financial crisis, has been the strategy that has worked. And of course, also don't fight the Fed. The Fed has been very, very clear that they're going to keep rates lower for longer. So let's just take a quick look here in terms of the markets and where we ended the trading day today. We certainly had a nice move higher in the Dow Jones. We were up by about 2%. The market was up by about 600 points. We also saw some nice strength in the S&P 500. As I briefly mentioned, we did have the best day since June of 2020 for the S&P in terms of the performance, up by about 2.4%. Also some strength in technology, a real buyback into those tech shares that were under so much pressure last week. The NASDAQ up by 3%. And also financials continue to be a place to put money to work, up by 3%. The XLE, or the energy ETF, I look up by 2.6%. XLI, industrials up by 2.5%. And again, the tech sector, XLK, up by 3.2%. Importantly as well, some of those stocks that showed some weakness last week got a nice buyback today. Apple, for one, up by 5.4%. The company did announce that all of their U.S. stores are now open, clearly an outperformer in the market. Another outperformer that I want to show you is Exxon, up by close to 4%. It has obviously been moving higher with respect to the price of WTI up. And also, I actually bought the stock a couple of months ago with an 8 or 9% yield. So that's obviously been a benefit as well for those looking for some yield or dividends. But today, the company did agree to an activist investor looking for a couple of board seats. Also watching Boeing up nicely today to the tune of about 6%. UAL, or United Airlines, boosted their 737 MAX jet order, so that helped that stock. When we think about the TSX, it was up by 1.3% today, recouping some of last week's losses. It was down by 1.8%. We saw a nice buyback into the energy shares and also the financials, up by over 1% both. But a little bit of pressure in the material sector, weighed down by gold. Some company-specific stock stories that help the healthcare sector. Kronos is up by 5%. So really the cannabis companies helping the healthcare sector, which was an outperformer today. And also take a look at CAE, up by 12%. They did announce a nice acquisition of a military training company, saying that stuck up by 12%. And also we're keeping our eyes, of course, on BEI and the real estate sector. TD as well as National increased their price targets on that stock. I'd also just point out when we think about the Canadian market and perhaps the moves that we've seen in the energy sector, we have seen some nice inflows in the into the Canadian equity markets, likely because investors around the world do want more and more exposure to that reopening trade, the global growth story trade, which bodes well for the energy as well as the material sector, Xing out gold, of course. Speaking of which, take a look at what was going on in Bitcoin today. That was up by 6%. And of course, QBTC also up by 6%. Lastly, as we think about the Canadian markets, I would just mention that we do have some economic data coming out tomorrow. The GDP figure, 7.2% is the expected number that we'll see. Of course, we'll see where that comes out. But also, we have had a real disappointment in terms of direct investments from foreigners into the Canadian economy. We're actually at a 9-year low. So despite the fact that you're seeing money moves into the equity markets, buying up some of our shares, you aren't seeing investments being made from a foreign perspective. Again, we're at the lowest level that we've seen in 9 years. So we'll see how that all plays out to the economic data. Stay tuned, of course, for the GDP figure tomorrow morning, and we'll see what the trading day brings tomorrow. Have a great night.